Okay, so that was a lot to unpack, and definitely not what I was expecting from that episode. But here we are. Adventure Time Distant Lands Together Again is out now, and I'm gonna talk about it. This will be a spoiler-filled video where I'm just gonna share my immediate thoughts after watching the episode. I've watched it twice. I watched it yesterday, just rewatched it again right before recording this, so it's nice and fresh in my mind, and I don't have any notes, which I probably should have took some notes, but I mean, man, there's a lot to unpack here in this episode, and I'm sure everybody is reeling in very different ways. Let's just get right to it. I'll try to be comprehensive. So basically, what shocks me the most about this episode is the direction that they took with it. We were all sort of pretty, I guess, not even obviously led, because the only thing, aside from the show having a lot of Jake death related stuff in it, aside from Finn having a tattoo of Jake in obsidian, nothing really was directly telling us that Jake would be dead. But from the tattoo and the fact that he wasn't in obsidian, we were able to pull this expectation that, okay, together again, something's gonna happen to Jake. What I was expecting, and what it seems like a lot of other people were expecting too, based on the promotional material for Together Again as well, that we'd be seeing Jake dead, and then Finn would be going to the dead world to bring him back to life, and based on whatever emotional response the crew wants, the episode would end with them having to separate because Jake's dead for good, or it would have ended with them coming together. But no, in typical Adventure Time fashion, they do something that, like when you think about it now, is kind of totally predictable, given the way that the show plays with the timeline so much. I, at least, absolutely didn't think they'd do this direction, where this episode takes place 60, 70 plus years or whatever after the series finale, and everybody's dead. At least Finn and Jake, our main protagonists, are both just dead from, likely just natural causes. We see Finn as an old man. Maybe he got caught up in some adventure and just wasn't able to help himself. I don't know. I mean, the fact that we don't get an answer on how either of them died is pretty fantastic, honestly. Yeah, at least us wondering. It's another question on top of the thousands of questions that Adventure Time always gives us. I'm just so surprised and very happy with this type of direction for the episode, because what we have here is just so dark. What other kids cartoon that is this, something like Adventure Time that has gone on for so long? But I think it's just more so the fact that this is theoretically a kids cartoon. How is it that they were able to get away with an episode where both of the main characters are dead, and somehow they turn it into a happy story? I've been playing a lot of Binding of Isaac lately, and that's one of my favorite games ever made, and that has a lot of death and enlightenment type of visual stuff going on. So I'm really in a mindset for this type of story, and this episode on all fronts, especially aesthetically, really delivers on that. Tying back to how sort of jarring this episode topic is, the introduction for this episode is amazing. Right when the ice cream starts melting, and then Jake is saying no, you just gotta wait or something. Right then and there, I was like, okay, I see what kind of direction they're taking this. Jake is already dead. This is some sort of vision or something Finn is having. And then it just kept getting creepier and creepier until we just see Jake's grave, and Jake instinctively just wanting to be inside of it, and Finn doing everything in his power to prevent having to see Jake die again. And then having a total breakdown, Jake melts into a puddle, Finn's screaming and crying. There's jarring flashes back to Finn being an old man. It's a horrifying scene. That is straight up horror movie material in the first 6 minutes of this Adventure Time episode, and it's amazing. That's one of the most interesting sequences this show's ever done, honestly. Adventure Time's always had bizarro, cool dream sequences. That's one of my favorite aspects of the show. I love surrealism, and I love when things are able to be creepy without it being very explicitly like a horror movie where oh, there's a clown and he's eating somebody's intestines. Scary, right? Because it's blood. Yeah, sure. No, but something like this, Adventure Time, where it's this cute aesthetic where with these dot smile characters, and then we get a scene like this with this terrifying music and this build up and these staticky sound effects. It's so cool. I want to rewatch this sequence a bunch of times. It's traumatizing. It's horrifying, but it's awesome. It's just really, really well done. And that whole sequence of the episode really got me thinking about just what if we were able to go into this episode with zero expectation at all? What if they didn't foreshadow the Jake death aspect. That's what we came in here to expect. So no matter how in-depth they went into the death aspects of this episode, like, we were still expecting death to some degree. What if this episode just came out, no, I wouldn't say zero advertisement because we need advertisement, but like if it came out with even more deliberate marketing, because honestly, they did a really good job marketing this and editing it around so that we didn't know a lot of what was actually going to go on in the episode. With, you know, amazing job to them there. But like, what if they did it even further and we didn't have any expectation at all? And this episode just starts like that. Like, it just all of a sudden, we get this title card that says Finn and Jake are dead. And then we're like, okay. I thought this was going to be Finn and Jake going on one last adventure. But, I mean, I guess they kind of are in a really horrifying, weird way. But even just that way that they kind of fourth wall play with the title card. Like that joke of just suddenly like Finn realizing he's dead and then the title card comes up and it adds the text. That's just hilarious. Like, very self-aware, I guess. Again, like, this should be horrifying, and some aspects of it kind of, you know, are the way they illustrate it. But then other times, it's just peaceful and it's funny and it's understandable. That's kind of a theme that goes on in the whole episode. And also, Finn has nipples when he's older. Aren't there a lot of times in the show where Finn like is missing nipples? Anyways, I don't know why I'm noticing that. But look, see, the fact that I could jump from discussions about themes to the fact that this character has a nipple all of a sudden, like, that's Adventure Time. But just the fact that the whole theme of this episode is about like accepting death is just so unheard of, I guess, in a way. Like, the only other type of thing that I could think that has taken this kind of approach is BoJack Horseman, which is like an adult show, and it's like, you know, kind of a dramatic climactic episode where this type of thing happens. But here in Adventure Time, like, it's kind of just played out to be a natural episode in a weird way, even though it's such a jarring, dark situation. And that's like the pageantry of it. That's what's so interesting about Adventure Time. It can cover this type of topic, and we're just like, yeah, okay. Like, yeah, Finn and Jake were gonna die eventually, sure. I didn't think I would ever see them both dead, but there we go. It's an entire episode about that, and it's just great. I almost wish, to an extent, like, I don't know, I'm sure this is something they must have thought about at some point, but probably like both for marketing and like for aspects of the theme as well, and just like fan service stuff, kind of. I almost wish Finn was his old man form the entire episode. How like jarring would that have been, on top of how jarring everything else already is? I think that would have been really interesting. Because even then, I kind of just wish a little bit more of the episode we saw Finn at his natural age, given the timeline of the episode. I wouldn't say I'm really upset at all, because like, you gotta love normal Finn, basically. But it just would have been really interesting for them to be really subversive with it and have Finn and Jake be like totally altered for the whole episode. That actually kind of gets me thinking now too, like, Jake is his normal self. Is that because Jake was perceiving himself like that, or because Finn was perceiving him like that? Or did Jake die when he was like 40? You know, I don't know, but I guess I shouldn't place even more depressing potential theories into this. I don't know. I can continue on that thought. Like, there's just kind of, I would say like 3 aspects of this episode. Like, this episode's fantastic. I think it is really, really fantastic. I don't know how to compare it to the other episodes, because like the other Distant Lands episodes, BMO is such its own thing compared to the Obsidian and Together Again. But I feel like ultimately Obsidian is probably like just a bit better of a like constructed story with like a rounded and nice happy ending and development and character arc and everything. So I think probably like on that kind of objective front, Obsidian is the best special, but like that doesn't detract from the other 2 being fantastic as well. And I think probably, I love Adventure Time's version of space and that whole aesthetic that we got to see in BMO, but I think the really bizarro dead worlds and like just, again, like the creepy visuals and ideas that we get in Together Again, I think I like that a lot more than BMO. Yeah, I guess just to keep this going, like there's 3 things about Together Again that did just seem a little weird to me, that I wouldn't say are downsides, but just things that, like, I don't know, the episode should have maybe been longer to be able to get this stuff done. I already kind of talked about old Finn. I wish there was more of that aspect of it, because it just would have been so subversive and interesting, and he's very funny. I meant to go look at who they got to voice act older Finn, but I think that it was just really funny being able to see that, and I think it would have been a really cool subversion for them to take that even further and have that version of Finn cover more of the episode, but that doesn't really matter too much. That's not really much of a complaint. That's just kind of something that would have made me really happy if I went into the episode and that's how it was. But I know like, that's the kind of thing too where like other people would have gone to the episode and then like we're seeing a Finn that's not the Finn that we're used to, and we would have probably been a little mad about that. You know, it would have been like a Metal Gear Solid 2 situation where Metal Gear Solid 2 was advertised to feature Solid Snake as the main character, but then when you actually play the game, Solid Snake's the main character for like 20 minutes of the game, and then the rest you play as somebody else. I think it would have been cool for them to try to do that here with Together Again, but I can understand why they wouldn't have. The other aspect of this episode that I think is a little weird was Finn and Jake's family coming back, which it's just like, of course that kind of had to happen. Like it would have just been a big lingering question, like Finn's going through Dead Worlds and somehow he didn't also care to look for his parents. So it's great that they're included, but I just feel like their inclusion doesn't do too much. Like I feel like there should have been a stronger emotional moment there, but Finn kind of just says mom and dad, hugs them, they give him some stuff, then he leaves, and then they're kind of used for the Tiffany subplot, which is pretty great. I guess I should have talked about Tiffany a little more too. Somehow, beyond all possible predictions, this is like 80% Finn and Jake and 20% a Tiffany episode somehow. Especially on my second watch of the episode, I did like how they were used for Tiffany's plot, but you know, maybe they should have somehow like only been used for that plot. Like maybe just Tiffany encountered them just to have them in the episode, because I don't think the reunion with Finn and them was as strong as like it should have been. It's probably just mainly because they had to keep the plot moving forward. So I think it's kind of weird for them to have even tried to have that reunion at all when it really is just like a very brief like minute long scene where Finn kind of cries and hugs them and then gets sad that they got blown up and then like just kind of sees them again later and smiles. You know, like these are his dead adoptive parents. Like even Jake doesn't really see them or have much of a reaction to them. Later in the episode when they're fighting New Death and Jake pulls out the note from their mom, like Jake knows that that's a note from their mom. You know, like this is a nitpicky like continuity type of thing, but it's like somehow in such a tense situation recognize the handwriting. Was he watching Finn? I guess he kind of was watching Finn because he said he felt his vibes or whatever, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like if they were going to put Jake's family in here, they should have done a little more with it, and they probably didn't, just because they probably didn't have the time to, and also probably not to make things too overly sappy, you know? Because that's something that this episode definitely does a good job of, is it's a very dark, kind of depressing setting, but they never really, it never gets too sad, it never gets too sappy. It gets sentimental like at the very end, but that's the very end, you know, that's the part to do it. The episode isn't trickled with too many really long moments of Finn being anxious or depressed or anything like that. We get him shortly after this scene here, we get Finn breaking down and crying, and that is an amazing scene too. And I mean, it's just an amazing animation sequence too, seeing him, and the voice acting there too is incredible, but seeing him weep and then age and then explode into a skeleton, like that's just very creepy sort of, but like it's awesome. Yeah, I like how Joshua and Margaret are used to push Tiffany forward. I think Tiffany gets an interesting arc there, but I just feel like there could have been if there was more time for it, could have had a more emotional purpose for Finn and Jake's aspect of the story as well. And just the one other thing is, it's not really even bad, especially rewatching it. I felt like this was stronger than when I was first watching it. I think it was just because it really feels like it comes out of nowhere, the fact that New Death is being controlled by the Lich. I feel like they're just missing like one or two tiny instances of foreshadowing earlier in the episode so that you can actually see that coming. Because kind of aside from his design being like lichy, there's not really much of a way to see that coming in my eye. So when all of a sudden we're seeing New Death's flashback and you hear the Lich saying strike, and like right there I was able to be like, wait, the Lich is controlling him? Why all of a sudden? And then, you know, it makes more sense very shortly after. But there's kind of so much going on in the episode. You know, you see so many worlds. You're following this emotional journey of Finn. You're following the emotional journey of Tiffany. You're learning the lore of how the Dead World works and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden at the end, the last 6 minutes of the episode, quite literally, the Lich is involved, like all of a sudden, and he's awesome. Like, this is a super cool Lich sequence. As always, they never ever really, I feel like maybe Whispers was the only episode where I kind of felt the Lich was kind of not utilized too well, because like kind of just like this episode in a weird way, the Lich in Whispers was killed off by Sweet Pea within like 3 minutes of the ending of the episode, you know? You don't get to see much of him do stuff, but this sequence here lasts much longer, and it's certainly more interesting than that was. We also get this whole, like, it's both like a callback so that you can remember the journey of the Lich, but it's also just kind of an animation flex and like a big fan servicey moment, at least to me who loves the darker aspects of the show. This little transition animation we get of like all the Lich's forms across the show leading up to him being the hand in this episode is such a cool sequence. Like I basically pointed out all three, but like Finn cry, or the start of the episode where we see Jake's grave, the middle of the episode where Finn is breaking down in the destroyed dead world, and then this sequence here where we see the Lich evolving over time. Those are like three of the coolest sequences the show has ever done, and they're all in one episode. Also, it's just really funny and interesting and cool how they can make this Lich hand so terrifying, even though in this episode he's literally just a hand and like he talks like a hand puppet, but it's terrifying because of the voice of the situation and everything. I think that's really funny. It makes sense for the finale of Adventure Time for the Lich to come back. It makes sense for him to be here. His objective makes sense too. It just feels like they should have sprinkled a little bit of an expectation so that, you know, we're not so fixated on New Death being this new villain. Then we learned about Life like a scene ago, and then all of a sudden we're seeing the Lich. You know, like, I love it, but it is just a little jarring on top of everything else that the episode is trying to deliver. If they build it up like from the get-go of the episode that the Lich was involved somehow, it would have felt less sudden. I guess kind of just on that topic too, New Death as a character is like amazing. He's hilarious. My first time watching the episode, and even a bit the second time, like his voice is weird. Like it's kind of a little too exaggerated. I do genuinely like, I can't hear some of the things that he's saying because of the way he says them. Just the whole aesthetic of like these like punk frat boys controlling the underworld and wanting to destroy stuff like just because it's cool to destroy stuff is really funny. The design of him, the design of the Undertakers, the Undertakers especially were really, really cool. Their wings, the wings on the Undertakers were so simple, but they were really, something about them was so cool. I don't know if it was even just the coloring or like the way they were used like as hands and stuff. I don't really know. The way that they hold that big orb over all these, like look at this bird dead world here. Like it's like what, it's so cool looking. We get a good I feel like this Shoko moment is like a very major like fan servicey type of moment. I'm surprisingly not seeing that many people react to it. After seeing this scene, I thought my entire Twitter feed would be fan art of just this scene, but again, there's so much in the episode that there's other things that people focus on, but I thought people were gonna really, really love this because I did. Yeah, just all the designs here were so cool. There's some really cool shots. This shot of Tiffany with the cake cutter with the wing hands, like this, like look how cool this is. This is on screen for a few seconds. It kind of amounts to nothing because Tiffany changes his mind instantly after, but this just looks so cool. Oh, and then Peppermint Butler with the bone spell too. Again, like that's just a hilarious joke. Like, yeah, you could take our bones, but we don't know where they are. Oh, I already have them. There's like a bit of a pause, and Finn's like, hey. Oh, that's so funny. There's also that really funny joke of that guy who's being reincarnated, and like he's so bitter about it. He's like, oh, please let me be something cool this time. And he's a little bug, and he just says, well, that's what I get for asking. Like, that's so funny. And that sequence, too, is also a really nice small look into that process of reincarnation in the Adventure Time universe, too. Like, that's a pretty significant bit of lore we get there, but also it's coated over with a pretty great joke. There's a shot, too, right before this scene where, like, Tiffany's flying into the 50th Dead World. Like, something about that shot, the way the wings are animated in that is so cool, too. Another great scene, too, is right at the end where Finn and Jake begin to fight over who's gonna become the next Death. And they're, like, transforming between different forms as they're fighting and stuff. Like, that's such a good scene because you know that that's the only reason why Finn and Jake would ever fight. It makes sense for this type of emotional conclusion for their story for us to see that. because they love each other so much. Like, they're best bros. They would only fight over protecting themselves. Who is more worthy of protecting the other is what they're trying to accomplish there. It's a pretty heart-wrenching moment, even though it does go by a little quick. I almost forgot to mention it even, but that's a really great moment. I'm also noticing there's a lot of depth of field in this special. I think the other specials had a bit as well, but the original show never really did. But here, like at the beginning when Finn's crying over the grave, like the camera blurs like it's Finn's tears, or here we see the snake in the foreground. Composition and effects like that weren't really done in the original series. They're much more cinematic looking and match Distant Lands really well. Yeah, I don't know. I've been sitting here for 30 minutes and I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface of this episode at all. I mean, I just kind of want to make it apparent that I think it's really cool, I guess. Like, there's so much thematic stuff to talk about. There's so much emotional stuff. What grabs me the most about this episode, and kind of the same thing grabbed me about the BMO episode too, really, it's just like how cinematic and like beautiful it is. Especially the music in this episode. There is some really, really cinematic music in this episode that is the type of music that we never hear in Adventure Time, kind of naturally because of the usual tone of the show, but it just makes so much sense for this type of story, and it really adds to a lot of scenes, especially again that suspenseful intro scene, and then like the emotional moments towards the end and the action in the middle and stuff. Like it's just all so cool. You know, that's all I could say about this episode, is that it's just so cool. It has some dark content. There's a lot of stuff to unpack. There's so much depth and emotion to it. It seems like it should be so emotional, yet they're able to make it an uplifting story and a satisfying conclusion to this series. It's just amazing that this is a show that can do this. We have an episode about both of the main characters after they've died, and we're just like, yeah, okay, that's the episode. Interesting episode. Let's see how they react to being dead. They make it this cool new adventure where we see this new side of the Adventure Time universe that we got very, very, very small looks at before. Like, I'm kind of realizing I don't think I ever saw the Frog season shorts where Life first appears. So this is like technically the first time that she appears to me. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I'm gushing, really, because like what else can I say? Like, this episode is just so easy to ingest. You know, it's so emotional and intense, yet it still just feels like a nice Adventure Time episode that is full of creativity and great laughs, cool designs and everything. Like, if you watch it, you'll get it, you know? I feel like the only thing that was really necessary for me to say was to point out the small things that I thought were just kind of a little like unrealized. Because this episode is basically ambitious. Like, this is an ambitious episode. So I just felt like I should have pointed out the few things that I thought were a little off about it. But like, the rest is incredible. There's just watch it. But of course you've watched it because you've listened to me talk about it for almost 30 minutes now. So yeah, it's just amazing. It hits all the right notes with me. Like, everything is on point here. It's Adventure Time at its finest, and like, you know, it is like such a, when you start thinking about it, like a dreary episode, that I do definitely think that the series finale, like Come Along With Me, I feel like that is definitely a much more proper conclusion for the Adventure Time universe, just because of the way the show builds itself, that we know that Jake would die eventually, that we know that there's a land of the dead, but we don't know much about it. This episode, Together Again, this episode is like a very essential epilogue. I feel like Come Along With Me is a better tie for everything, because it covers a lot and it has the nice montage and it has the look into the future with Shermie and Beth. This episode provides us a really cool look into a side of the Adventure Time world that we would have never seen otherwise, unless we got this type of story about our heroes passing on and learning to accept that part of life. It's a lot, you know, it's a lot to take in. But I'm happy everybody else seems to really, really love this episode, because it's this whole Distant Land series, like, it's just such a labor of love. You know, Cartoon Network let them bring the show back for some specials, and they're like, okay, we need to do everything that we weren't necessarily able to conclude in the main series. We need to put that all into these 4 episodes that we're getting. And then here we go. So I have Wizard City coming up. I don't know what the heck to expect from that. I really hope, just given how these other episodes have been, I think Wizard City will very likely expand upon how magic works in the Adventure Time universe, and like, it'll be our bookend for that aspect of the lore, and that'll definitely be cool. But even if it isn't, you know, if it still just gives us some really cool wizard worlds and stuff, like, that's enough for me, because Together Again is the peak for sure. They all knew that too, and this was supposed to be the last episode, but they got Wizard City as an extra. Will they get even more after these? I don't know. Like, what could they do, you know? It's important for them to have made together again before they weren't allowed to. But like, if somehow, by some miracle, we are gonna get a Distant Lands 2, like what? They're gonna give us like a Lemon Grab episode? Like, they could keep exploring Adventure Time's world for sure. But I think they peaked with this one, you know? I don't think that anything they could come up with would be as satisfying and kind of essential feeling as this episode and Obsidian. Yeah, I don't know. This is like one of the longest solo recordings I've ever done. It's almost been 40 minutes. And again, I feel like I said almost nothing. But what am I supposed to say? I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you enjoyed me ranting about it. My throat's really dry. I had my wisdom teeth taken out like 4 days ago. So it's very hard for me to even open my mouth. But of course they had to release this episode this week. So I had to sit here and gush about it. So I hope you enjoyed listening to me gush about it. Let me know your thoughts about everything in the comments. Let's wait. What was it, like 5 months or something since Obsidian came out? You know, let's wait another 5 or 6 months for Wizard City, and then we'll all feel like really empty after that comes out, because probably we'll have a sort of like unnatural feeling ending compared to how this ended here. Oh, just one last final point too. I never watched it, but I saw like the clips and like screenshots and stuff of the ending for Futurama. I feel like Together Again kind of has a very similar kind of ending to that, which is a weird comparison. But again, like BoJack Horseman, that's another adult cartoon, you know? Yeah, I don't know. I probably forgot to say a bunch of stuff that I meant to say, but whatever. I need to lay down. You know, we all need to lay down a little bit, cry a little bit. You know, we please leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to know when I post new videos. Thanks for watching. And super special thanks to my Patreon supporters. Support me on Patreon and you'll be able to submit video topics, see exclusive behind the scenes content, and help me keep this channel going. Also follow me on Twitter and TikTok for special updates.